He fought with his family and ran away. 27 years later, he discovered it was all just a misunderstanding. Caleb Miller squeezed the yellowed envelope between his trembling fingers as he read, for the 5th time, the letter that had arrived that Tuesday morning. 27 years after leaving home in Indianapolis, someone had finally managed to find him in the small town of Dayton, where he had been living as a mechanic for nearly 3 decades. The letter was from his sister Abigail, who was now 52 years old. She explained that she had hired a private detective to locate him after discovering some of their father's old papers in the attic of the house where they grew up. It was then that she understood what had really happened on that terrible night in December 1996. Caleb remembered every detail of that night as if it were yesterday. He had come home early from work at Henderson's auto shop and had stopped at the kitchen door when he heard voices coming from inside. His mother Martha and his sister Abigail were talking in low tones, almost whispering. "It's going to have to be split after all, Abigail. There's no other way," his mother said with a tired voice. "I know, Mom. But what about Caleb? He doesn't even know anything yet," Abigail replied. "Caleb is going to have to understand. What's left has to be divided between the two of you. We can't wait any longer. He's going to be really upset when he finds out we already decided everything without him," Abigail insisted. "Honey, there's no other way. Your father can't wait any longer, and Caleb has been so distant lately. If we wait for him to make a decision, it might be too late." Caleb had felt his blood boil in his veins. They were talking about splitting something between Abigail and him, but they had already decided everything behind his back. The grandfather's inheritance that had passed away 6 months earlier, maybe. Or perhaps the money their father had saved over years of working as a bus driver. Unable to control his anger, Caleb pushed the kitchen door open hard. "So, that's how you do things? You decide my life behind my back?" he shouted, making both women jump. His mother went pale and Abigail tried to explain. "Caleb, you didn't hear that right?" "I heard perfectly. You're sitting there planning how to split things up, and you didn't even bother to consult me. I've always been the odd one out in this family, haven't I? The one who works all day in the dirty shop while you two stay here scheming." "Son, that's not it at all," his mother tried, getting up from her chair. "Don't give me that. I heard everything. It has to be split. Caleb is going to have to understand. We already decided everything. Well then, don't worry about me anymore. Do whatever you want with Grandpa's inheritance or anything else." Abigail tried to get closer to her brother. "Caleb, please let me explain." "Explain what? That I'm a stranger in my own family? That you make plans without including me? It's always been like this. First Dad, who never had time for me, always working. Now the two of you joining forces against me." The argument had escalated quickly. Caleb shouted accusations while his mother cried, and Abigail desperately tried to explain something he didn't want to hear. Their father arrived home from work in the middle of the fight and tried to calm things down, but Caleb was already too upset to listen to any explanation. "That's it! I can't take this anymore," Caleb had shouted. "You can keep everything. Do whatever you want. I'm no longer part of this family." That very night, Caleb packed his bags and left home. He only left a note saying he was leaving and that they didn't want to see him anyway. He caught the early morning bus to Chicago, where he stayed for a few months working at auto shops until he saved up enough money to settle in Dayton. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, go ahead and drop a like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now, continuing. During all those years, Caleb had built a simple but dignified life in Dayton. He lived alone in a small house he had bought with great effort, worked at his own auto repair shop, and had a few close friends. He never got married, even though he'd had a few relationships over the years. Whenever things got too serious, he'd find an excuse to end things. The truth was that Caleb carried a wound that had never fully healed. No matter how hard he tried to move forward, there was always a voice in his head, asking whether he'd made the right decision that night. But his pride never allowed him to turn back or reach out to his family. In the first few years after running away, he'd occasionally thought about calling home, especially when he turned 30, or when he happened to hear from an old neighbor that his father was having health problems. But every time he picked up the phone, he remembered the conversation he'd overheard in the kitchen and the feeling of betrayal he'd experienced in that moment. Now, holding Abigail's letter, Caleb felt a mix of curiosity and dread. In the letter, his sister didn't go into detail about what exactly the misunderstanding had been. She only said they needed to talk in person and that there was something very important he needed to know about that night. Caleb read the letter one more time, paying close attention to every word. Abigail mentioned that their mother, now 75 years old, had been living with her since their father had passed away 5 years earlier. She also talked about her son Tyler, whom Caleb had never met, since Abigail had gotten married 2 years after he ran away. The letter ended with an emotional plea. "Caleb, please give me a chance to explain what really happened that night. Mom says your name every day and has never stopped hoping you'd come back. I know you have your reasons for staying away, but there's something you need to know about Dad and about that conversation you overheard. Please call me at the number on the envelope. Your sister who has never stopped loving you, Abigail." Caleb spent the rest of the day wondering whether or not he should make that call. Part of him wanted to know what this so-called misunderstanding Abigail mentioned in the letter was. Another part was afraid of reopening old wounds and finding out that maybe he'd spent 27 years away from his family for nothing. On Thursday morning, after a sleepless night, Caleb finally gathered the courage to dial the number on the envelope. His hands were shaking as he waited for someone to answer on the other end of the line. "Hello?" It was Abigail's voice, more mature but still recognizable. "Abigail, it's Caleb." There was a silence on the other end of the line before Abigail began to cry. "Caleb, oh my God, you called. I was starting to think you weren't going to get in touch. I got your letter. You mentioned a misunderstanding. Caleb, I need to tell you something very important. That night when you left home, you didn't understand the conversation you overheard." "What do you mean?" "I heard you all talking about dividing something up and that I was going to have to accept it because you'd already decided everything." Abigail took a deep breath before continuing. "Caleb, we weren't talking about any inheritance or money. We were talking about dividing up the responsibilities of caring for Dad." Caleb felt the world spin around him. "What?" "Dad was sick, Caleb. Very sick. He'd found out he had a serious heart condition, and the doctors said he was going to need constant care. Mom and I were talking about how we would split the care for him between the two of us because we thought you already had too much responsibility working at the shop." Caleb had to sit down. His legs were shaking and he felt as if the floor were disappearing beneath his feet. "You were talking about taking care of Dad?" "Yes. When you showed up screaming that night, we tried to explain, but you were so upset that we couldn't calm you down. Dad was devastated when you left. He kept saying it was his fault, that he should have told you about the illness sooner." Caleb swallowed hard. He felt as if all those years had been a nightmare he was finally waking up from. "And Dad? How is he?" Abigail was silent for a few seconds before answering with a choked voice. "Caleb, Dad passed away 5 years ago. His heart couldn't take it." The news hit Caleb like a punch to the gut. His father was gone and he hadn't even known. Even worse, his father had spent the last years of his life thinking his son hated him and had left because of his illness. Why didn't you try to find me sooner?" Caleb asked with a hoarse voice. "We tried, Caleb. We sent letters to Chicago at the address we managed to find, but they all came back. I hired detectives twice over the years, but you had completely vanished. It was only now that I got a lead on where you were through an old acquaintance of yours from Henderson's auto shop." Caleb ran his hand over his face, trying to process all this information. "How's Mom?" "She's fine physically, but Caleb, she never got over you leaving. Even now at 75, she sometimes sets an extra plate at the table, thinking you're going to show up for dinner. She always said you were just angry and that one day you'd come back." Caleb started to cry. 27 years of his life had been built on a terrible misunderstanding. 27 years away from a family that had always loved him and had tried to find him all those years. "Abigail, I made a terrible mistake. Caleb, what matters is that now you know the truth. Mom is still here, and Tyler, my son, always wanted to meet the famous uncle Grandma always talked about. You would take me back after all this? Abigail cried on the other end of the line. Caleb, you never stopped being part of this family. Mom always knew you'd come back one day. They talked for over an hour. Abigail told him about her life, about how she had become a teacher, about the husband she had met at church, and about Tyler, who was now 25 and worked as an engineer. She also talked about how hard it had been taking care of their mother alone, especially after she started having some memory problems. Caleb, in turn, told her about his life in Dayton, about the shop he had started, and about how he had never managed to start a family of his own because he always felt there was a part of him that was incomplete. When the call ended, they had agreed that Caleb would visit the family the following weekend. Abigail said she would prepare their mother gradually for the news because she didn't want her to have too big a shock. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, go ahead and leave a like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now, continuing. During the days that followed, Caleb could barely concentrate on work. His mind was completely focused on the reunion that was coming. He had spent so long imagining what it would be like to go home that now he couldn't believe it was actually going to happen. On Friday, Caleb closed the shop early and went to buy new clothes. He wanted to look presentable to see his mother again and meet his nephew. He also bought flowers and a small souvenir from Dayton to take as a gift. On Saturday morning, Caleb caught the bus to Indianapolis. Throughout the entire 2-hour trip, he was nervous, imagining what the reunion would be like. How would his mother react to seeing him? Would she even still remember him clearly, given the memory problems Abigail had mentioned? And his nephew, would he see him as a stranger who had abandoned the family? When the bus pulled into the Indianapolis bus depot, Caleb felt a rush of emotion as he recognized the city where he had grown up. A lot had changed over the years, but he could still make out a few landmarks from his youth. Abigail was waiting for him at the bus depot. Caleb recognized her immediately, even after all those years. She had aged, of course, but she still had the same warm smile he remembered from childhood. The embrace between the two siblings was long and emotional. Both of them cried without worrying about the people passing by around them. "You're thinner," Abigail said, looking her brother up and down. "And you're prettier," Caleb replied, trying to make a joke to hide his emotions. On the way home, Abigail filled him in on all the changes that had happened in the neighborhood where they grew up. Mr. Henderson's house had been torn down and a small grocery store had been built in its place. The square where Caleb used to play soccer with his friends now had brand new exercise equipment for senior citizens. "Mama doesn't know you're coming today," Abigail explained as she drove. "I told her a friend of mine was coming over for lunch. She's been a little confused lately, so I figured it was best not to get her hopes up in case you changed your mind at the last minute." "I understand. How is she exactly?" "Physically, she's fine. She still cooks. She still takes care of the house. But her memory is failing. Sometimes she mixes up dates, forgets the names of new people, but old memories, she still remembers those clearly. And Caleb, she talks about you every day." Caleb felt a tightness in his chest. His mother had spent all those years waiting for him, talking about him every day, even with her memory failing. When they arrived at the house where Caleb had grown up, he was surprised to see that almost nothing had changed on the outside. The same light blue paint, the same low fence, the same little garden in the front that his mother always tended with such care. "Tyler's inside with Grandma," Abigail explained. "He was eager to meet you." As he opened the front door, Caleb was immediately transported back to his childhood. The smell of the house was exactly the same, a mix of home-cooked food, coconut soap, and the subtle perfume his mother always wore. They heard voices coming from the kitchen. Abigail asked Caleb to wait in the living room while she paved the way. "Mama, my friend is here. I'm going to bring him in to meet you." Caleb heard his mother's voice answering from the other room, and the sound of that familiar voice brought tears to his eyes once again. It had been 27 years since he'd last heard that voice, which had been the soundtrack of his childhood. Abigail came back and signaled for Caleb to follow her into the kitchen. When Caleb walked into the kitchen, he saw his mother with her back to him, stirring something at the stove. She had aged, obviously, and she was shorter than he remembered, but she still had the same delicate mannerisms he recalled from when he was a child. "Mama, this is Caleb, my friend I told you about," Abigail said, trying to keep her voice steady. Martha turned around and looked at Caleb with a courteous smile, as she would with any visitor. But then, slowly, the expression on her face began to change. She tilted her head slightly to the side, as if trying to remember something. Caleb stood at the kitchen door, not knowing whether he should say something or wait for his mother's reaction. "Caleb," Martha murmured, as if testing the name on her tongue. Then suddenly, her eyes widened, and she brought her hands to her chest. "My son, Caleb!" she shouted, running toward her son. The reunion between mother and son was one of the most emotional moments of Caleb's life. Martha hugged him with a strength he didn't imagine she still had, repeating his name over and over as if she wanted to make sure he was really there. "My boy came back, my boy came back," she repeated, crying and laughing at the same time. Tyler, who had witnessed the whole scene, had tears in his eyes. He had never seen his grandmother so happy. "I always knew you would come back," said Martha, holding Caleb's face between her hands. "I always told Abigail that you were just angry, but that you would come back." Caleb could barely speak. Seeing his mother again, smelling her perfume, hearing her voice, all of it was too overwhelming. "I'm sorry, Mom, I'm sorry for staying away so long," he managed to say through his tears. "Don't talk like that, my son. What matters is that you're back. You're going to stay now, right? You're not leaving again." Caleb looked at Abigail, who was crying silently in the corner of the kitchen, and then looked at Tyler, who was watching him with curiosity and interest. "No, Mom, I'm not leaving again." Lunch was a family gathering like Caleb hadn't experienced in decades. Martha had prepared all the dishes Caleb loved most when he was young: pot roast with carrots, cornbread dressing, collard greens, and the famous apple pie she used to make on Sundays. "Grandma always made these dishes every week," Tyler told him. She said that when Uncle Caleb came back, he'd be hungry for home cooking. During lunch, Caleb got to know his nephew better. Tyler was a smart and funny young man, with a degree in civil engineering and working at a construction company in town. He said he'd grown up hearing stories about Uncle Caleb, about how good he was at soccer, and how he could fix anything that broke around the house. "Grandma always said that when you came back you'd teach me to work on cars," Tyler said, smiling. "And I will teach you," Caleb replied. "If you want, of course." Martha joined the conversation cheerfully for most of lunch, asking questions about Caleb's life in Dayton, wanting to know if he was eating well, if he had a comfortable home, if he needed anything. Caleb told her about his auto shop, about the little house he'd bought, about his few friends. He only left out the part about never having gotten married and about the loneliness he'd felt all those years. He didn't want to worry his mother with those things. After lunch, they sat in the living room and Abigail brought out a box of old photographs. Caleb got emotional seeing pictures of himself as a child, pictures of the whole family together, pictures of birthdays and holiday parties. "I kept them all," said Martha. "I always thought that one day you'd want to see them." There were also more recent pictures, of Tyler growing up, of graduations, of family birthdays. Caleb noticed that in all those newer pictures, there was always an empty seat at the table, as if the family was leaving a space for him. "Grandma never let us take a complete family photo," Tyler explained. "She said that until Uncle Caleb came back, the family wasn't complete." Late in the afternoon, when Caleb was getting ready to head back to Dayton, Martha became visibly distressed. "You'll come back tomorrow, right, my son?" "I'll be back next week, Mom, I promise." "Don't take too long. Now that you're back, I don't want to go too long without seeing you." Caleb promised he would be back soon, and that from now on they wouldn't go so long without seeing each other. On the trip back to Dayton, Caleb couldn't stop thinking about everything that had happened that day, seeing his mother's happiness, meeting his nephew, feeling again what it was like to be part of a family. It was all stirring something deep inside him. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, go ahead and leave a like, and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us folks who are just starting out. Now moving on. During the following week, Caleb could barely focus at work. His mind was constantly in Indianapolis, thinking about the family he had reconnected with. He decided he would go back the following weekend just as he had promised. But on Thursday, Abigail called with worry in her voice. "Caleb, I need to tell you something. After you left on Saturday, Mom got really restless. She spent all of Sunday asking when you were coming back. And last night she had an episode of confusion." "What do you mean?" "She woke up in the middle of the night and started searching the house for you. She was convinced you were here and had gotten lost. She got very upset when I tried to explain that you had gone back to Dayton." Caleb felt a pang of guilt. Maybe his visit had been too much for his mother, given the memory problems she was dealing with. "Do you think I shouldn't have come back?" "No, Caleb, that's not it. It's just that I think for Mom it was hard to understand that you exist, that you were here, but that you live in another city. In her mind, if you came back, you should stay here with us." Caleb grew thoughtful. He had built his life in Dayton. He had his shop, his house, his life. But at the same time, seeing his mother's happiness on Saturday and knowing she was now confused and suffering because of his absence was breaking his heart. "Abigail, I'll think of a solution. I can't let Mom suffer like this. Caleb, you don't have to give up your life because of this. We'll figure it out." "No, Abigail. I've already lost 27 years away from my family. I'm not going to waste any more time." That very night, Caleb made a decision that would completely change his life. He was going to move back to Indianapolis. Over the weekend, Caleb traveled to Indianapolis again, but this time with a plan. He talked at length with Abigail about the possibility of moving back to the city, explained that he wanted to sell the shop in Dayton and start over in Indianapolis. "Caleb, are you sure about this? It's a huge decision." "Abigail, I built a life in Dayton, but it was never a complete life. Something was always missing. Now I know what it was. You all." Tyler, who was joining the conversation, got excited at the possibility. "Uncle Caleb, if you move back here, you can teach me how to work on cars. And who knows, maybe we can even work together someday." Caleb smiled. The idea of having a closer relationship with his nephew pleased him a great deal. "And Grandma would be so happy," Tyler continued. "She always says the house feels too empty without you." During that weekend, Caleb also talked to some old acquaintances about the possibility of setting up a shop in the city. He found out there was an empty warehouse in a good location that could be rented for a reasonable price. When he told his mother about the plans, Martha was overjoyed. "I always knew you'd come back home for real, my boy. A mother can feel these things. But it'll take about 2 months, Mom. I need to sell things in Dayton and get myself organized." "That's no problem, my boy. I waited 27 years. I can wait 2 more months." Back in Dayton, Caleb started getting the move organized. He put the house up for sale, started negotiating the sale of the tools and equipment from the shop, and began notifying clients about the closing. Some friends in Dayton were surprised by Caleb's sudden decision, but when he explained the situation, everyone understood and supported him. "Man, family is the most important thing in life," said Scott, his best friend in town. "You're doing the right thing." During this preparation period, Caleb started going to Indianapolis every weekend. He wanted to make the most of the time he could spend with his family and also gradually get his mother used to his constant presence. Tyler began spending Saturdays at the shop with Caleb, learning the basics of mechanics. The young man showed himself to be interested and skilled, and Caleb was happy imagining that maybe he could have his nephew as a partner in the future. "Tyler has a knack for it," Caleb commented to Abigail. "He's smart and has the patience to learn. He's loving these moments with you. Since he was a kid, he wanted to have an uncle present in his life." These words touched Caleb deeply. He realized that his absence hadn't only affected his parents and his sister, but had also deprived Tyler of having a close male figure in the family, since the young man's father had passed away when he was only 15. As the weeks went by, Caleb noticed that his mother was calmer and happier. Martha had stopped having episodes of confusion and seemed to be enjoying every moment of the weekends with her son. "The difference in Mom is incredible," Abigail commented. "She's more energetic, more cheerful. Even her memory seems to be better." Caleb was also feeling the benefits of this reunion. For the first time in 27 years, he felt that he was exactly where he should be. The feeling of incompleteness that had followed him for so long was finally fading away. 2 months later, Caleb finally moved to Indianapolis for good. Abigail had arranged a small apartment for him to rent near the family home, so he could have his independence, but always be close by. On moving day, the whole family was excited. Martha had prepared a special lunch to celebrate her son's definitive return. Tyler had helped carry Caleb's things and was eager to start working with his uncle at the new shop. "Now the family is truly complete again," Martha said, hugging Caleb at the front door. Caleb's new shop opened a month after the move. Tyler started working with him in his free time after his job at the construction company. The young man showed more and more interest in learning the trade, and Caleb started thinking about the possibility of having his nephew as a partner in the future. "Uncle, do you think one day I can be your official partner here at the shop?" Tyler asked one afternoon. "Of course, Tyler. It would be an honor to have you as a partner. But first you need to learn all the techniques well." The relationship between the two was growing stronger every day. Caleb felt that he was finally being the uncle he should have been since Tyler's birth, and the young man was loving having someone in the family to admire and learn from. Abigail was also visibly happier with her brother's return. She, who had carried the weight of taking care of their mother alone all these years, now had someone to share that responsibility. "Caleb, you have no idea what a relief it is to know I'm no longer alone in taking care of Mom," she confessed one night while they were having coffee in the kitchen of the family home. "Abigail, I'm sorry for having left you alone with all of this for so long. Caleb, the important thing is that now you're here, and Mom is happier than I've seen her in years." Indeed, Martha was visibly more cheerful since her son's definitive return. She had gone back to cooking more often, tending to her garden with more dedication, and had even made some new friends at the neighborhood community center. 3 months after Caleb's return, the family decided to organize a small party to officially celebrate the reunion. It was a simple event, only with the closest relatives and some family friends, but for Caleb, it was one of the most special days of his life. During the party, Martha gave a short speech that moved everyone present. "I always knew my son would come back. A mother feels these things in her heart. During all these years, I never lost hope. And now that he's back here, I can say my family is complete again." Caleb, emotional, also wanted to say something. "I spent 27 years of my life thinking I had made the right decision when I left home. But today I understand that a family's love is the most important thing there is. Thank you for never giving up on me, even when I gave up on you." The party went on until late at night with lots of conversation, laughter, and old stories being remembered. Caleb truly felt at home for the first time in decades, but life, as always, had other surprises in store. A few weeks after the party, Abigail received an unexpected phone call that would once again change the family's dynamics. The call was from a social worker at City Hall, informing them that some old documents had been found in a municipal archive mentioning the Miller family. Apparently, there were issues related to a property that Caleb's grandfather had left behind that had never been resolved. "Caleb, do you remember that little piece of land Grandpa had out in the countryside?" asked Abigail. "I vaguely remember." "Why?" "It seems there's some paperwork that needs to be sorted out. The lady at City Hall said we might be entitled to something related to that property." Caleb didn't place much importance on inheritance matters, especially after discovering that the misunderstanding that had caused him to run away was precisely related to a conversation about inheritance that he had misinterpreted. "Abigail, let's not create problems over money or property. I already learned my lesson about that." "I know, Caleb, but maybe it's important that we at least know what it's about." After some conversations, they decided to go to City Hall to better understand the situation. What they found out surprised them. The rural property that had belonged to his grandfather had been expropriated years ago for the construction of a road. The compensation amount had been deposited in a court account because they couldn't locate all the heirs, specifically Caleb, who had gone missing. "The amount has been adjusted over the years," explained the City Hall employee. "Now that we've located all the heirs, You can receive the compensation. The amount was considerable, enough to make a significant difference in all their lives. Caleb became thoughtful upon discovering that this money was waiting for them. "That's ironic," he commented to Abigail as they left City Hall. "I left home thinking you were scheming about an inheritance, and now there's a real inheritance waiting for us." "Caleb, what do you think we should do?" Caleb thought for a few moments before answering. "I think we should use this money for something that benefits the whole family. Maybe renovate Mom's house or invest in Tyler's education, or who knows, expand the auto shop so we can really work together." Abigail smiled. That was exactly the kind of response she expected from her brother. Mama will be happy to know she'll finally have her two boys working together on something. When they told Martha about the inheritance, she was more interested in the possibility of seeing them working as partners than in the money itself. "What I wanted most in life was to see you two together again," she said. "If that money can help with that, then it's a blessing." Tyler was also excited about the possibility of leaving his job at the construction company and dedicating himself fully to the shop with Caleb. "Uncle, with this money we can set up a big modern shop. It could be the start of a real family business." Caleb liked the idea. The prospect of building something as a family, something that could be passed down to the next generations, excited him greatly. They spent the following weeks planning how to use the inheritance money in the best possible way. They decided to split it into 3 parts. 1 part to renovate and modernize the house where Martha lived, 1 part to expand the shop, and 1 part to invest in Tyler's continued education. The house renovation was the first project. Caleb and Tyler worked together to modernize the electrical wiring, remodel the bathrooms, and build a small porch where Martha could host her friends for afternoon coffee. "This is the first time in decades this house has gotten a renovation," Abigail commented, watching the progress on the work. "Mama deserves a beautiful, comfortable home," Caleb replied. "She took care of this house all by herself for a very long time." During the renovation, many childhood memories came back to Caleb's mind. He remembered helping his father with small repairs around the house, how his mother had always dreamed of having a porch to receive visitors, how he and Abigail used to play in the backyard on weekends. "It's funny how you only appreciate these memories when you get older," he remarked to Tyler while they painted one of the walls. "Uncle, do you think it was worth holding on to a grudge for as long as you did?" His nephew's question caught Caleb by surprise. Tyler had never directly touched on the subject of his uncle's absence all those years. "No, Tyler, it definitely wasn't worth it. I lost 27 years of my life because of a silly misunderstanding. I lost the chance to watch you grow up, to take care of my parents when they needed it, to be a brother to Abigail when she needed support the most. But you came back, and now we can build new memories together." Caleb smiled. His nephew's wisdom impressed him. "You're right. What matters is what we do from here on." As the house renovation progressed, Caleb and Tyler also worked on the project for the new shop. They had found a larger lot in a strategic location in the city, where they could build a modern, spacious shop. The plan included not just the shop equipment, but also a small parts store, a comfortable waiting area for customers, and even an office where Tyler could handle the business side of things. "Tyler has a really good head for business," Caleb commented to Abigail. "He's thinking about things I never would have considered. He was always smart about that kind of thing. Even at the construction company, he was always suggesting ways to improve the processes." The partnership between uncle and nephew was working better than either of them had imagined. Caleb brought practical experience and technical knowledge, while Tyler contributed modern ideas about management and customer service. "Uncle, I was thinking we could offer a different kind of service," Tyler suggested one afternoon. "Like picking up the customer's car from their house and returning it after the repair. A lot of hard-working people don't have time to bring their car to the shop." "That's an excellent idea, Tyler. Why didn't I ever think of that?" "Because you always worked alone, Uncle. Now that we're together, you can think bigger." The new shop opened 6 months after Caleb's permanent return to Indianapolis. It was an event that brought the whole family and many friends together. Martha, visibly proud, cut the ribbon alongside Caleb and Tyler. "This is the happiest moment of my life," she said, emotional. seeing my two boys working together, building something as a family. Abigail was also radiant. Seeing her brother and her son working side by side was a dream she didn't even know she had. Caleb, thank you for coming back. Not just for Mom, but for all of us. Tyler is much happier since you came back. I'm the one who should thank you all for not giving up on me. The shop prospered quickly. The combination of Caleb's experience with Tyler's innovative ideas attracted many customers. Before long, they were already thinking about hiring employees to keep up with the demand. "Uncle, we're growing faster than I expected," Tyler commented, looking at the schedule full of appointments. "That's what happens when you work with love and dedication, Tyler, and especially when you work as a family." 1 year after Caleb's return, the Miller family was completely transformed. Martha, now 76, was healthier and more energetic than she had been in years. The renovated house had become a meeting place, not only for the family, but also for her friends from the community center. Abigail had decided to retire earlier than she had planned in order to dedicate more time to the family. With Caleb back and Tyler working at the shop, she felt that she could finally relax and enjoy life. "I spent so many years worrying about everyone that I forgot to live for myself," she confessed to Caleb. "Now that you're here sharing the responsibilities, I can do the things I've always wanted to do." Caleb felt fulfilled in a way he had never experienced before, working with Tyler, taking care of his mother together with Abigail, being part of a real family. All of this filled a void he had carried for decades. But perhaps the greatest gift of this reconciliation was the discovery of old documents in the attic of the house found during the renovation. Among them were letters that his father had written to Caleb during the years of absence but never sent. The letters revealed the deep pain the father felt because of his son's absence. But they also showed the unconditional love he had never stopped feeling. In one of the letters, written shortly before he passed away, the father said, "My son Caleb, if you ever read this letter, I want you to know that I never stopped loving you. I know our family made mistakes on that terrible night, and maybe I should have run after you to explain everything. But pride and illness stopped me. I hope that one day you can forgive this imperfect father and come back home. You will always be my boy, no matter how many years pass." Caleb cried like a child reading those letters, knowing that his father had never stopped loving him and had suffered so much with the separation was at once comforting and painful. "At least now you know that Dad was never mad at you," said Abigail, who was also moved by the discovery of the letters. "Yeah, and I know he'd be happy seeing the family back together again," Caleb replied. The letters became a treasure to Caleb. He read them whenever he missed his father or whenever he needed to remember the importance of not letting pride destroy family relationships. 2 years after Caleb's return, the shop had become one of the most respected in the city. Tyler had officially become his uncle's business partner, and they were planning to expand the shop to include automotive painting services. "Uncle, sometimes I think about how things would be if you hadn't come back," Tyler said one afternoon as they were organizing the tools. "Don't think about that, Tyler. What matters is that I came back and now we're here building something together." "That's true. And Grandma is so happy. Yesterday she told me she can now rest in peace because she's seen the family united again." Caleb felt a chill run down his spine at his nephew's words. "Don't talk like that, Tyler. Grandma still has many years ahead of her to watch us thrive." "I know, Uncle, but it's good to know she feels whole again." That night, Caleb lay awake thinking about Tyler's words. His mother truly seemed at peace ever since he'd come back. It was as if she had spent all those years waiting for this moment of reconciliation. End of story. Now tell me what you thought of this story of family reunion and overcoming the odds. Do you think Caleb made the right decision in coming home? Leave your honest comments about this emotional journey of reconciliation after 27 years. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other touching stories like this one.